I'm really excited to have you here today and talking about something that's a mystery to many of us, which is the term content marketing, what it is, how do you do it, and all of that. We're going to dive into that in great detail, I know, because our audience is going to ask you lots of questions. So do that, audience. But before we do that, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your career and what led you to being an expert in this area of content marketing.
Great. Hey, thanks, Steve, and thanks for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here. I am an ex-journalist. I worked in journalism for more than 20 years, and most of it at the Washington Post. And I left and started this business about 8 years ago. And so content was kind of really a natural move for me, right? I was an editor, I was a reporter. I felt I understood it. And as I often tell, the story I often tell is I have a friend who runs a web development firm. And he told me when I was kind of figuring out what I was going to do next, he said, I have a lot of people who design websites, or I design websites for, and we finish the job and then they come back to me a month or two and they say, what do I do now? And if you had something you could help those people with, that might be a business. So that's kind of how where this all started.
Yeah, and I think in the world of journalism, the internet was the ultimate disruptor. I mean, and it's been, as many people know, I was with the Washington Post for 20 years as well, and the newsroom looks radically different than it did on All the President's Men. It's very digital, and the amazing thing, I think, from a journalist perspective is, a journalist used to write an article and it would be on the front page and you could assume that people were reading it. But now when things are published on the internet, you can actually see who's reading it, how long they're reading it, how engaged they are, and the actions that occur. It's also fitting that you're talking about this subject, because back in the good old days, we as organizations, we really relied on the media to get the word out about things. And now I tell people is that we are all in control. It's like we've got our own little media empire, and it's on your social media and it's on your website. Is that you're in complete control of what you put out there and how you put it out there, and you can build an audience the same way that media outlets do as well. So I know I'm babbling here, so you're a journalist, and then you sort of moved into you have your own firm.
Right. Yes. And I had a stage. I was a print journalist for most of my career, but in the last 5 or 6 years of that, I moved over to the digital side, and that's where I kind of started to get a feel for it. And then it came a time I was like, I think it's time to do something else. And so I started doing digital marketing, and my first clients wanted a little bit of content, a little bit of pay-per-click advertising. And I learned the pay-per-click advertising on the fly, learned the principles of SEO. I knew some of it from journalism, and just started to apply it and learned the marketing side, the buyer's journey and all that sort of thing. And it's kind of come together as a nice package. The nice thing, and we can get into this in the talk about content marketing, is, like you said, you're telling your own story, and there's a lot of parallels to journalism, right? You want to engage people in a similar way, and you want to make it a valuable experience for them, in much the way a journalist is trying to do when they tell their stories.
I love it. Now, I think you've got a presentation to walk through for us, and you've got a slide deck, but I'm really excited because we've already got one question that came in, and I'm just going to sort of give this to you, but I'm also doing this to remind the audience, let's have a discussion. The best presentations are the ones where you guys are throwing out ideas and questions. But Sophia Ross says, can you talk about or give examples of what not to do or major red flags to stay away from in regards to content marketing? So I'm just going to throw that one out to you. And if you want to weave it into your presentation, that's great, or we can address it at the very end.
I know I'm going to mention that when we get to a certain slide. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's Sophia Ross asked that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm writing the note down to remember, but I know where that fits. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. It's a good question. Very good question.
Excellent. Okay. Well, if you want to share your slide, I'm going to drop behind the curtain.
Okay.
I'll jump in if there's any questions or issues that come up, but real psyched to dive into this important topic.
Fantastic. Okay, here goes. All right. Are you guys seeing that screen?
Yep. Yeah, we see it.
Fantastic. Okay. Next. Okay. Yeah. So Steve, I was able to give some of my background already with Steve about my background as a journalist at the Washington Post and how it kind of makes sense that I would go from journalism to content marketing. To be honest, though, when I started the company, I enjoyed working online and was comfortable with technology and the internet and writing, but the word marketing didn't sit very well with me at first. Marketing carries some negative connotations too, especially for a journalist. But what I've discovered over time is that there's some sorts of marketing that I'm really comfortable with and comfortable suggesting and recommending to my clients. Search ads on Google are one, because you know that if someone types something into Google, they're looking for, laundry detergent, and an ad comes up for laundry detergent, that's what they wanted. You're not forcing anything on them that they didn't want. You're not scamming them. That feels like an honest business transaction to me. Content marketing is another thing that I'm really comfortable with. Why? Because it's an honest, helpful way to introduce your product or service to people who need them and assist people in making a smart decision about it. And as a side benefit, it works. There are two parts of this presentation. In part one, I'm going to define content marketing to the best of my ability. As a business person, you know what marketing is, and you know marketing is important. You need it to bring in new customers. But as a consumer, you also know how people and how you feel about TV commercials and pop-up ads on a website. They're annoying. They interrupt what you're doing. And even worse, a lot of times you don't trust the claims they're making in these ads you see. But what if I told you there's a type of online marketing that people actually look for themselves? They seek it out. And when they find it and read it, or they watch it or listen to it, it actually makes them trust the company more. It's called content marketing. And here's a definition I pulled from the Content Marketing Institute, which is a website that I think does really good work. As you can see, content marketing is a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience and ultimately to drive profitable customer action. I think that's a really good, complete definition. And let's break it down a little bit. There's some keywords there that I've highlighted here that we can go into. When it says, the definition says that content marketing is strategic, that means every piece of content that you create is part of a plan. You're doing it with a goal in mind. Just because you see, oh, my competitor blogged about topic X, that's not a good enough reason to create your own blog post about that. That's not strategic, right? So you want to be strategic about what you do with content marketing. By saying the content is valuable, this definition is saying, the marketing content you create informs your prospective customer instead of annoying them. They get something out of it. It's, you're giving of yourself and being generous here. When I say it's relevant to their situation, their problems, their aspirations, and it's targeted, which is something the internet can do really well, better than TV and radio in a lot of ways, right? You can use some of the tools on the internet to make sure you reach the people you want to reach. The word consistent, obviously, it means you're producing your content on a regular basis. Content marketing is not effective if you just kind of try to employ a one and done strategy. You've got to do it on a regular basis over time to get results. And then a clearly defined audience is your ideal customer. I've highlighted at the end the word profitable. I don't think you need me to explain why that part is important in the definition. That's part of the deal too, though. So if we want to get more specific, I'd say there are two more important characteristics of digital or online content marketing. One It leads a prospect through the buyer's journey. That's the metaphorical trip we all take when we go from thinking about buying something to actually making the purchase. And then the content is more focused on your prospects' problems rather than your solutions. Your content marketing can't be me. Look what I do. And that's Sophia Ross's question, things to avoid in content marketing. If you're talking about yourself too much and your features of your product and why you think your product is so great, then you're making a little bit of a mistake with content marketing. You want to say, here are the problems I solve. Here's what it's going to do for you. Types of content marketing you generally see online include blog posts, videos, podcasts, case studies, infographics, and more. You're familiar with a lot, if not all of those, I'm sure. If you put all of that together, the benefits of content marketing, the valuable, relevant content you produce consistently are, one, it pulls customers in. Instead of you pushing it in front of their faces, if you're a senior moving service, for instance, you gain business by converting the people who Google how to help my dad downsize, and then they end up at your website. They eventually kind of form a relationship with you and buy from you. That's the way content marketing is working in an ideal situation. Content marketing also builds a relationship between you and the prospect before any money is exchanged. If your blog post is about downsizing and it's helpful and credible, people read it and they start to trust you. And that's what this is all about, trust. Trust lays the solid foundation for future transactions. There are additional benefits to content marketing as well. For one, it demonstrates your expertise. A prospect might think, well, if this company knows so much about the challenges of downsizing, I bet they take into consideration all those factors when they're actually doing the move, right? They start to say, oh, they know what they're doing here. It builds your brand. Even the people who don't buy from you start to know you, and they'll refer others to you, maybe even if they didn't use your services themselves. Content marketing is great because, believe it or not, it narrows your audience. This is an important part of content marketing. It should make clear who you help and what problems you can fix, so the people you can't help move on instead of wasting your time with an inquiry, right? You're not only appealing to the people who you can do business with, but you're making it clear, these people, I don't do this and I don't do that. I just do this. And that helps you. It saves time in the end and resources. Finally, content marketing is great because it has search engine optimization, or SEO, benefits. SEO is the art of showing up prominently in searches on Google and on Bing and other places, but mostly on Google because they dominate the search market. It used to involve a lot of technical changes and tricks with your website, keyword stuffing, they called it, where you'd put the same word in the blog post 17 times to make sure Google saw you. But that stuff doesn't really work anymore. What really matters to Google is, do people consume and link to your content, and do they find it valuable? If people Google something, they see you, they go to that article and they stay on for a while, Google notices and you rise in the search rankings. So now part two, how does this all work? In this part of the session, I'm going to share my method for creating high quality, effective content marketing. The key steps are: 1, identifying a target audience and their needs; 2, planning for each stage of the buyer's journey; 3, writing content that converts; 4, performing a thorough self-edit; and then 5, anticipating the next step. And I like to note that a lot of time in the presentation, I might say the word writing because of my journalism background when I'm talking about creating content, but this method applies to audio and video content as well. But writing is just kind of that natural word that falls out of my mouth, so you'll hear that. Before I start on a piece of content marketing for a client, or before I get the client started and help them down that path, I ask 2 questions. 1, who is this going to be for? And 2, how ready are they to buy? And that's another reference to the buyer's journey, the stages people typically go through before they're making a purchase. To define who the content is for, I suggest clients create customer personas. You've probably heard of these. Detailed descriptions of your ideal customers. You want to answer questions like the ones I've listed on this slide. Who are they? Where are they in their company hierarchy if you're selling to a business? what are their motivations, etc. You go into detail on the characteristics, interests, problems, and behaviors that are relevant to your product or service and how they will be most likely to find your content. So you're thinking not only who this person is, but kind of where they are online. Do they use Facebook more than they use Twitter? You know, where will they, how can I get this content in front of them, as well as what content will appeal to them? The better you understand your customers and your prospects, the better you're going to be able to create content that engages them. So some businesses might stop at saying, okay, our ideal customer is a financially comfortable senior. That's who we market to. But others go deeper. They say, look, if I reach retired Anne Arundel County teachers, age 70 plus, who have a pension plan, then I'm going to have a much better chance at success. That's defining a customer persona, right? You've really said, this is exactly who I want to reach, and that will inform all the decisions you make down the line about your content and how you promote it. Now that you've defined the who in this equation, let's look at how close they are to buying. The classic way to look at this is called the buyer's journey, and it's typically divided into 3 stages: awareness, consideration, and decision. When a prospect's in the awareness stage, they're aware they have a problem, but they're not sure exactly what it is. Your content will help them identify that problem. In the consideration stage, they're thinking about different solutions to the problem. Your content is helping them evaluate the solutions, and your solution is going to be one of them. Maybe not the only one you're talking about, but that's where you're starting to say, this is what we do and how we address that problem. And then in the decision stage, your content addresses those who have decided your solution is a good fit, your type of solution is a good fit, and it helps them decide to buy. So here's an example of a buyer's journey. Say a homeowner has found a puddle peeking out from under their dishwasher. In the awareness stage, they're wondering, okay, where is this leak coming from? And your content helps them understand the problem and introduce solutions. You know, you start to help them figure out, diagnose the problem, right? In the consideration stage, they're starting to think, okay, I have an idea why this happened, but how do I get it fixed? And then you're helping them zoom in on the best solution for a leaky dishwasher, you know, hiring a mechanic, getting a new dishwasher, whatever else is in between, doing it yourself, etc. And then in the decision stage, they're deciding, okay, which one is the best for me? Which solution is the way to go? Or what am I going to put down my money for? And your content helps them see exactly what your solution does and why it's best for them, if it is best for them. But you're hoping it is best for them, and you're making that case. In a good content marketing plan, you'll start creating content for each persona you've come up with, and then for each stage of the buyer's journey. So I think of it like a matrix, right? So for persona 1, I'm going to make some awareness stage content. I'm going to make some consideration stage content. I'm going to write up some decision stage content. And that's kind of my long-term plan, is to fill this matrix out with a bunch of different ideas, and then actually execute and write those ideas. So here's an example, you know, some examples. I've taken in each stage a different type of business and kind of come up with an example. So if we look at this in the awareness stage, where you're trying to help a reader understand the root of their problem and introduce solutions, say you're a daily money manager, you might be writing how to help an aging parent with their finances. This is very awareness stage content, right? You're not saying do it this way or do it that way. You're just getting them in that space where they're thinking about their options. Consideration stage, where you're helping readers zero in on the best type of solution for their problem. Say you're a senior transportation service. You might write a blog post that's what to look for in a senior transportation service. You're basically laying out the pros and cons of different solutions that they could be going at, so they start to firm up their decision. Okay, what am I going to do? No, that makes sense to me. I think this kind of transportation service makes sense for me. And then hopefully they move to the decision stage, where you're helping the reader see exactly what your solution does and why it's best for them. Say you're a home care provider. You might write a blog post, what a typical day with a home care provider is like. This is that kind of in-depth case study content where people really get the idea of what it's like if they buy from you, exactly what they're going to get. And that's great decision stage content. Once you've chosen a topic, so say you've laid all this out, You figured, okay, I'm going to write these 10 blog posts over the next few months. And I'm going to start with this one. Once you've chosen that topic and you sit down to write, you want to create an engaging piece of content, of course. Here are some keys to doing that. One key, choosing the right voice. You want to speak the language of your customer. Is it a business-like language? Are they casual? Do they use a lot of jargon, or is it very easily understandable? You always write to that audience and want to make it sound like the other conversations they have in their life, right? Another key to being engaging, tell a story. Just because you're writing about business doesn't mean you have to be dry and boring. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then there's some problem or tension that's resolved over the course of that. Can you create content like that? You really should try to, right? That's what's going to engage people and keep them on the page from start to finish. You want to start strong. This is what we call in journalism a lead, the first paragraph of your story, first sentence, 2 sentences of what you've written. You really want to grab their attention there. If you don't grab their attention in the first few lines, you're going to lose them. This is the internet. There are infinite choices. If they get to something, it seems boring in a couple seconds, they're on to the next thing. So your lead, their beginning is very, very important. And finally, write a really good headline. Believe it or not, a headline is almost as important as the content that's below it. If you write a bad headline, it doesn't grab a reader's attention, doesn't tell them what it's about or appeal to them in any way, they're on to the next thing. And the other important thing to know about headlines is they have a lot of SEO value. If you write a good headline that really reflects the key concepts in your piece, it's going to show up better in Google. Perhaps the most common question someone like me gets when people start on content marketing is, how long should I make these pieces? There's no set answer. In the news business, there's a saying that a really good long story feels like it takes no time at all to read, and a poorly written short story takes forever to get through. And that's true, right? But I will say online, in general, online is shorter is better online. People are multitasking. They're in a hurry. They have a lot of choices, like we said, online. So they scan and skim. So not many people are going to get through a long blog post or a long video. Short and sweet is usually better. Once you've finished writing that short and sweet content, you're not really done. A key principle to my approach is to creating high quality content is reviewing your work to make it better. If you don't spend this time after you're finished really polishing it and making sure it's as good as possible, it's not going to be high quality. And quality does make a big difference. That's what keeps people around. And like I said, when you keep people around, Google rewards you and you earn trust and respectability, etc. So I suggest what I like to call a triple review. After you're done, the first thing you do, read through or listen or watch your piece as if you were the reader or the viewer or the listener. How does it sound to them? It's difficult to take that step back and kind of look at your work from the reader's perspective, but if you can do it, it'll help a lot. And sometimes maybe if you can't do it, get a friend or a colleague to look to. You need that extra perspective on it. Then I say go through another review. This time go through just looking for grammar and style. By style, I mean clear and concise writing. Are you using the right word? Is that the right word? Is this the right phrase, etc.? Are you using too many words? You know, if you read a sentence out loud that you've written and you run out of breath, then yeah, you're using too many words. Try to keep it short and to the point. And extraneous words should, get them out of your copy. Finally, the third review, go through and look at the nuts and bolts of your writing, things like spelling and punctuation. One trick that works for me at this stage is I read my piece backwards, sentence by sentence backwards, up from the bottom to the top. That takes the context out of it, and it makes me just think about those words right there. Are they spelled right? Are they the right word? Is it, does it all make sense? Have I missed a punctuation, a point of punctuation, etc.? I find that really helpful, reading backwards through it to kind of catch those small errors. This stuff may all sound like real nitpicky stuff, but it's important. Content that gets the details right is more trustworthy. And like I said, content marketing is all about trust. You're building trust. Once you've completed that triple review, the final stage is anticipating and encouraging the reader's next step. What do you want them to do next? If you're creating a consideration stage piece, that middle stage, you might have a decision stage piece that you want them to see next. Or maybe you want them to subscribe to your email newsletter to receive more of this type of content. Whatever it is, you need to tell them. We call it a call to action. You're familiar with a call to action, I'm sure. You see them all over the internet. They're the buttons and links and headlines, often like this orange one on this page, that tell people, hey, do this now. You should consider this. Take this next step. And call to actions are super important in content marketing. You want to move them along and get them to the next thing, encourage them to do this. You should also think about where are you going to promote this piece? Simply publishing content on your website and moving on to your next task doesn't guarantee a single page view. You have no idea if people are going to see it. So you need to make a distribution plan and stick to it. Whether it's posting on social media, emailing people and contacts, encouraging friends to share it, using advertising to bring in readers, all of it can work. Just make sure you've done it. I guess when Sophia asked about, things you need to avoid in content marketing, this would be my other thing, is thinking just putting it on my website is good enough and moving on to the next thing. It's not good enough. If you'd like additional resources and help with content marketing, here are a few websites that I think have really great content and kind of how-to content, tips, both about the content and the SEO, et cetera. Digital Marketer, HubSpot, and Moz are all fantastic websites with a lot of good information. And I always recommend Ann Handley's bi-weekly email. It's all about content marketing, and she's a really great writer, as well as, really plugged in and knows what she's talking about. So if you go to annhandley.com/newsletter, you could subscribe. Every other Sunday you get an email, and I always smile when that pops into my inbox. Finally, I offer some free resources as well. On my website, I have a guide to creating content, quality content. You can download it there at squarelydigital.com/guide. I run content marketing tune-up workshops every so often. They're free. It's a Zoom session where participants come in and they bring one piece of content, and we kind of workshop it together and talk about what works and what doesn't work. The next one's on May 7th. That's a Friday from 9 to 10 a.m. And that's at squarelydigital.com/tuneup. And finally, you could just email me. I do free consultations, quick consultations with people as well. There's my email, john@squarelydigital.com. So
Yeah,
that's the presentation. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad you threw in the resource to have you help with content, because when you run through all the details that are involved, you realize that this is a challenging job, and a lot of times it's one of these things that's sort of thrown at us from our boss that, oh, you're going to be the one updating the website, and I want you to write a blog post or whatever. And let's see, who was it? I think Gail Huberman said, she says, I'm not that great of a speller. I love the idea of reading backwards. I've never heard that tip, but I can see where that's where you're going to really, you're forcing yourself to look at the words and not assume that they're spelled correctly.
Yeah, because you've written it, right? You've written the piece and you know what it says. So when you read it start to finish, your mind fills in all the gaps. You know what's there already.
This is great. Let's see. Catherine Bedow has her hand raised. Sometimes this is a mistake, but Catherine, if it's not a mistake and you have a question or a comment, unmute yourself and we will get to your question. Bess Witoski says, can you repeat blogs info on social media and in newsletters? Does the repeating hurt or help? Yeah. So I guess, you do a blog post and then can you repost, or how do you do that with your emails and your social media?
So that's a really good question. And it's part of the, like, if I did a second presentation, a big part of it would be about repurposing your content. We're all busy and, there are a lot of demands on us. So I think it's really smart to think about how you can use the content in multiple places, right? Say you write a blog post, take some of the best stuff and you repeat it on social media. Yes, do it. You record a video on YouTube, take the script and make it a blog post. Repeating is not bad. Repurpose, maybe add a little value, change it up a little bit, but you can get a lot of mileage out of the content you do if you think it through. Yeah, so repeating is not bad. Just change it up a little bit, add a little value, put it in a format. Obviously Twitter values brevity and things like that, so you have to change it a little bit. But yeah.
Also, one amazing resource that I want to make sure that the audience knows about is a website called rev.com, rev.com. And if you have a YouTube video, a Zoom meeting with your colleagues, you can upload that to Rev, and for a very affordable rate, they will transcribe it in literally hours. I use them all the time to do transcriptions, and they're really good.
Steve, one thing else I should say about repurposing content is it works the other way too, where I've had a lot of success. Say you write 5 blog posts about a similar topic, about one topic. Eventually take those, turn them into a PDF, a downloadable white paper that, then you say, to get my whole, the complete guide to this topic, give me your email address and download it. It's a great content marketing tactic.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because oftentimes I meet with so many of you guys on your marketing is that oftentimes it's sort of like, we've got to create a how-to guide on hiring a home care agency or whatever it is. Okay. And that task can be overwhelming. It's sort of like, well, we can't do it. Let's go out and get John Denuzio. He's a writer. He can do it, whatever. But one way to approach that is break it off, like John just said, in little chunks. It's sort of like, okay, the outcome at the end of the 6-month period is we're going to have a little book put together on how to choose a home care agency, but let's do it by doing some well-crafted blog posts every other week, so that at the end result, we've got our book done and nobody, had to stay up night and write the term paper. Let's see. Audra Bakaitis has a really good talking point for discussion. She says, do you think it's equally important to market to adult children who may also be seniors themselves, or to their parents, or one over the other? And before I get your feedback on this, John, I like the fact that you started this off is you got to know who your audience is. And one of the challenges that I've faced through my career, and I know many of us face, is that I basically have 3 audiences that I'm always communicating with: the older adults planning for themselves, the adult children who are helping mom and dad, and then the third audience is the senior serving professional that's out there. And I can't tell you how challenging it is when you're trying to write articles and content to 3 different audiences. It's not easy. And I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
So it depends on the situation, obviously, but if you're in a situation like you are, Steve, where you say you have 3 different audiences, you write different content for each of them. Don't try to combine them. Don't say this piece is both for audience A and audience B. Just write that one for A, appeal just to them, and then later write the one for B. It has a couple benefits. One, it's directly relevant to that one audience, right? They're not going to get to one point in the piece and say, oh, this part isn't for me. It's all for them, so it keeps them engaged. And 2, it gives you more ideas, right? Why why make it harder on yourself by saying, I'm going to combine this and just make one piece? No, you have an easy way to make multiple stories that way. So yeah, in this field, it's a lot like B2B, where there are a lot of decision makers and you have to appeal to all of them.
Yeah, and that one of the beauties of having a website is that you can create sections for your content. So here is our catalog of articles if you're planning ahead for yourself. Here is our catalog of articles if you care about a loved one. Mary Darn says, I'm a senior specialist realtor and I market to both the seniors themselves and to the adult children, different content for different targets. Right on, Mary. Oh, I love this question from Deb Marimer. She's with Buckley's for Seniors. She says, we frequently get requests from outside sources asking to write blog content for us for free. What's in it for them? Why might one consider using these free blog posts? I get those too as well, Deb, and I have some thoughts on this, but I'm curious, John, what can you share any perspective on
sure.
that?
So from the outside company's perspective, that's called link building. It's an SEO tactic, and they're trying to get their content on other websites with a link back to their site, because that builds, if you have links to your website on other people's websites, that helps your SEO. The more of those, the better. So they're trying to get that. They're also trying to grow their brand or the awareness of what they do. So that's the kind of obvious things that are in it for them. Should you do it? If it's good content, there's no harm in having guest blog posts, right? No harm at all. If it's good content and you're linking to someone you respect or can trust, yes. Just as long as you're taking your reader's best interest in mind, make the decision that way.
Yeah, no, really good response there, John. And so Deb, and everybody is that when you get these solicitations, I think one important thing is reading through the content. And like I frequently get a lot of press releases. And when you get press releases, 9 out of 10 times in the headline, they put the company name, and oftentimes we'll publish a press release almost verbatim, except for, as John had said, we rewrite the headline. So it says sort of like CVS Pharmacy conducts a research study that older adults don't like to drive. I'll take out the CVS Pharmacy and just say research on older adults driving, and doing it that way. I'm assuming that if somebody is asking you to post a free article, John, they're going to be perfectly happy if you made a few edits to it and posted it. They're asking you to post it, correct?
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, let's see. Jennifer Brown says, the key comment is trust. Do you want to be affiliated with the other company? Vetting these requests and companies is very difficult. I totally agree.
Yep.
And John, you said it really well in the beginning, is that, it's sort of this selfish snake. Most of us, we get in this sort of selfish mode. It's sort of like the companies that are sending out the solicitation, they've got a focus. They want to get their content on other people's websites. One of the ways to sort of, and whether or not that appeals to your customers and to your prospects is you have to be selfish in terms of, is this going to be something that is going to make the lives of people that land on my website or read my newsletter feel better? Over the years, John, I get solicitations on this quite frequently, and I know many of my customers have sort of like hired outside firms, because what you've spelled out to us in terms of how to do really good content is rather overwhelming. And so you'll see these companies that are out there and they'll be like, hey, we can help you be ranked #1 on Google, and we'll put together your content and what have you. And I've talked to my clients that have hired some of these firms, and some are very good, but oftentimes what I see is that it's a big company that's in Des Moines, Iowa, and they don't really know your business. They're just throwing together articles chock full of random keywords in the hopes that that's going to improve your SEO and you're going to keep on paying the monthly bill. I'm assuming you don't run one of these factories, and I'm also assuming that you have pretty in-depth conversations with clients on either coaching them to write content or you writing the content for them.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I have different engagements with different types of clients, and sometimes it is kind of like a coaching or editing experience where we work together on the ideas, they write the content, they bring it back to me and say, what do you think? And I edit it, and it goes out. Sometimes they're handing all of it off to me, and I'll get some other people on my team, and we'll get together and we do it all for them. But even in that second case, we're spending a lot of time talking to the client to make sure we understand exactly what their business is, who their ideal customer is, what the value they're offering, all that stuff. We really want to make sure we understand it well. And generic content, that's kind of in the ballpark isn't going to do anything for you. You'll find some of those firms, they're giving the same content basically to a bunch of different websites, in different regions of the country. And if it's the same, if it's out there, if it's a commodity, it's obviously not going to help you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Catherine Beto has a great question, and this is something that I'm super passionate about. And she says, how effective are testimonials on a web page? And you sort of talked about this. Storytelling, in my opinion, is the absolute best content that's out there. And the proof is in the pudding, is that look at, the front page of the Washington Post. Look at, all the media that we read. It's always a story about somebody, okay? Now, where this sometimes, and I know I'm babbling here, but where this sometimes can take a shift from sales pitch, from storytelling to sales pitch is in that testimonial phase, okay? So that, I think, people like reading that somebody likes a company and uses a company. But I think when we're talking about content, I think they want to hear the story about how and why and the journey to working with that company.
Right.
So
Yeah. So there are two things I think of when I saw that question. One, testimonials in general, when people put the quotes on their website, that's great. I think it's very important to do. It's an important part of, optimizing your website because people want to see social proof that it works. But like you said, as far as content, like content marketing we're talking about, which is more in-depth, if case studies are really great. I encourage everybody, if you can do a case study, do it, because you can write then in depth about what you do, what your process is, what it's like to work with you, what benefits that the people receive, all framed in the kind of put into this frame of, hey, this client, this actual person, this actual company got this from us when they did it. So yeah, content, that kind of case study, success story is super effective and really important. And like I said in the presentation, most of the time it's really effective as decision stage content. When people are deciding, I think I like, Steve's company, should I go with them? Then something like that can put them over the top.
Yeah. And, you talked about repurposing content is that one of the best ways to get awesome testimonials is to interview your clients on their experience and say, hey, we want to, maybe it's a section on your website where you have client interviews or resident interviews or family interviews, and you sort of put this together. That's where you're going to get some real authentic quotes and testimonials.
Absolutely. And,
So
you should be talking, this is beyond what I talk about, but in a sense, but you should be talking to your customers and asking them questions like that anyway. And it also will help you when you're defining your customer persona, coming up with ideas for content that you're creating. Everything that they tell you can be fodder for that, right? Oh, they really like when we do this. Turn that into a blog post, Oh, they decided to go with us because of this. Well, that's going to help you decide to write something too.
great. Okay, let's see. We've got a question on the screen. I brought up rev.com, and what I'm going to do, So I'm going to share my little dashboard here. Somebody was asking about Rev.com and how it works, and I want to show you something pretty cool here. This is my dashboard for Rev.com, and what you see is these could be YouTube videos, they could be Zoom meetings, what have you. And here's one. This is actually, I did the interview for the upcoming uh, cover story for the upcoming Positive Aging source book. Really excited about this. Journalist David Shoemaker. You probably remember him, John. He was on ABC. He is in an assisted living community, and I interviewed him over a Zoom call. And all I had to do was upload that audio file to rev.com, and it gives me this amazing transcript that I now can give to my editor to write the story. And but this is, I know many of us in the audience, one way that we're providing content now is doing webinars. So think about, you could do a webinar, upload the video to rev.com, and I think it's like $70 an hour or something like that. They'll do a transcript so that now somebody could either they have the choice to either watch that webinar or read the transcript. So for the person that asked that question, I hope that you found that helpful. I used to use actual live transcription services, and rev.com is live, but they're doing something that is amazing, man, because it's so fast and so quick.
That looks great. For someone who used to tape an interview and then transcribe it, that's like.
I did that. It would sometimes take a whole day to
Yep.
listen to it backwards and forwards. Holy cow! I love how fast these discussions go. We got about 4 or 5 minutes till the top of the hour. So if anybody wants to creep any last minute questions, by all means, throw them in there. And but then we can start kind of winding down here. John, do you have any sort of closing thoughts or ideas that you would want to share with the audience?
I just think, the thing I like to emphasize, I emphasize it a little bit in there, is that if you concentrate on the people you want, the customers you have, and the customers you want to have, and what they need, their problems, the things they're concerned about, and write it from that, everything you create is that from that perspective, you're going to have a lot of success. That in the end is what it's about.
And honestly, I'm glad you're saying this, that the marketing discussions that we have had on here, the truly good marketing strategy and execution requires a deep knowledge of your customers, who they are, what they like, why they buy from you. The more you understand that, the more you can go out and get more people just like them. But when it comes to the content, it's that's a key ingredient. It's sort of like, if you don't know who your customers are, then then it's going to make it harder to prepare content. And so, one of the things that I'm thinking that we should do as a discussion here in the next month or so is how to properly survey our customers to gather this information. So I'll throw that out to the audience. If anybody either has done a good job of surveying your customer base or would like to be a guinea pig, we could maybe play around with this concept as a group for one of these discussions. Well, holy cow, John, we're done with our hour here, and I want to thank everybody for attending. As a reminder, this will be recorded, and I'll share that with you. I'll also make sure that we send contact information for John so that you can consult with him and and get some feedback and maybe get some assistance with your content marketing as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Okay. All right. We will be talking to everybody soon. Thanks.
Have a good day.